Good evening. I am Kamau Kujichagulia, and this is On the Case with Kamau Kujichagulia, where each week we talk with someone in our community who has a vested interest in our well-being, which, can be kind of dubious there because there's not a lot of people that have a vested interest in our well-being. But when we find them, we want to talk with them and we want to share them with you. This week, we're going to have a young man by the name of Yannick Wood. He's the Director of Criminal Justice Reform Program for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. That's a mouthful, and we're going to find out. But Michael's going to help me do that. Hello, son. How are you?
What's up, Pop? I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. So how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. Just work.
Okay.
Just work. What about you? How's your week going?
Well, I've had conversations this week with white people about racism and the mental health of Black people having to deal with white people in the mental health system. But conversations went pretty well, to tell you honest God truth. So
progress?
No. I didn't say that. I didn't say it was any progress. I said that conversations went well. I got my point across. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I don't think there was any progress, which is sad, really. That I don't know how to progress in dealing with the system of white supremacy. So
yeah, me neither.
Other than reparations, which I don't think we're going to get a meaningful.
The city of San Francisco offered us $5 million for the residents.
For all of them.
A total of $5 million.
All of them. All of the residents. All the Black residents. So they end up getting $5 million. $6 a piece, right?
Yes, something like that.
Like I said, I didn't think there would be any meaningful reparations, So, $5 million. Anyway, that's how my week went. Getting ready to go on my vacation pretty soon to Indonesia. So that'll be happy to find out how Indonesians are. I love meeting other peoples. But anyway, let me get my good brother Yannick on here and talk with him. There he is. Yannick Wood.
How you doing, Mr. Wood?
Good. How are you doing? How's everyone doing?
Welcome to On the Case with Kamau Kujichagulia and Michael Harmon. Mike, I want you to know for clarification, Michael is my son.
Okay.
My eldest, firstborn. Okay.
The leader. Number one.
Wouldn't that be great? Push me out the way. Put me out to pasture. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
The best.
Okay. So, Brother Yannick, you are the Director of Criminal Justice Reform Program at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Why don't you tell us a little about who you are and then tell us what that means?
All right. Who am I? Who is Yannick? All right. So right now, just professionally, I work for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. It's a policy and advocacy organization that's meant to uplift communities of color. We work in a few issue areas. We work in criminal justice reform. We work in democracy. We work in economic justice. I'm the guru for criminal justice reform, and I currently our work focuses on working to achieve police accountability. We're working to reform the court system, to expand jury service to people who are currently excluded from the jury service. So that's a lot of people of color, as people who have indictable offense convictions or felony convictions. We want to get rid of peremptory challenges, basically tools that that prosecutors all too often use to remove people of color from juries. And then we want to work in the youth justice sphere. We want to close youth prisons that currently exist. We want there to be newer facilities for the few youth who do need to be in out-of-home placements. And we just want to focus, just all together, we want to focus on the front end of providing prevention services, diversion services, and work on preventing people from even entering into the criminal justice system in the first place. Because we know that the criminal justice system is so broken. Before working in this position, I worked as a prosecutor actually in New York City. So that's the reason why I could say that the criminal justice system is broken. I worked very hard to try to provide mental health services and substance use treatment for the individuals I was prosecuting. For a lot of the situations, I felt like I kind of went up against just an old way of doing things that saw people who are being prosecuted, people who are being arrested as the other. And because they were the other, they were treated in a certain way. And the answer was incarceration or detention. It was the
How did you get to be a prosecutor?
Say that one more time.
How did you get to be a prosecutor?
Yeah. There was a time I was in law school and I had a talk in an ethics class by a prosecutor. It was a Black woman who was talking about how prosecutors have certain heightened levels of ethics where they had to provide sometimes evidence that was exculpatory, sometimes evidence that would injure their case to the defendant or to the person who was being accused. And that was something that really resonated to me, that as a prosecutor, your oath is to be, protecting the people who have been harmed, but also your oath is supposed to be to protecting the people you prosecute as well. We know that that's not how it works a lot.
So you fell for that one?
Yeah. I guess I did. But you see, the thing about it is, it's a two-edged sword. I mean, prosecutors can do and have done a lot of harm, but I think that if you do have the right person inside there who is truly progressive, then I think that that's it. That's a role. They're probably the most powerful person in the courtroom to dictate what's going on with the case. So if you have the right person in the role, then they can do a lot of good. So it's just a matter of finding the right person. Now, I might have been the right person.
They also dictate who and what charges are brought against people, aren't they?
Exactly. That was, something that I as a prosecutor, I would look at the facts. So sometimes police officers would come and they'd come with a case and they're like, hey, this is what it is. It's going to be this and that. And I'd have to look at it and be like, no, actually, it's not this. It's not that. There was one instance I remember where I did an investigation right after the person was arrested, and I realized that this person had an alibi that was not investigated by the police. So I spoke to the alibi witness, and then because of my investigation, I was able to dismiss the case or not follow through with charges on that case. So that's the power. The power is to dictate what charges, dictate whether the person's going to be indicted, to dictate, or that's one end of it. And the other end of it is deciding that, hey, the case is not worth anything. Let's dismiss this.
Is that why you had to leave?
Oh gosh.
I shouldn't say you had to leave, but
yeah. Well, the thing is, I like I said, like a prosecutor is really powerful on in the individual case, but from a policy perspective, it's very challenging to change the policies that you see are injurious to communities of color. So I left that role because I wanted to work in policy change. So that's how I find myself at the New Jersey Institute, working on the legislative level, working in policy to try to see what are the levers that we could shift. What are the things that we could transform? What are the things that we just need to get rid of? There's certain things that we just need to get rid of. New Jersey got rid of bail. That was something that in New York they had bail.
That was big.
Yeah, that was big. That was something that we were like, no, we can't fix this system. We have to abolish this system. And so there's situations like that, and that's what I want to work towards in my current role.
Okay.
I used to be a probation officer, juvenile probation officer in the city of Philadelphia. And I used to
Wow.
work with a few ADAs and district attorneys and public defenders. And I know how hard it is protecting, my probationers. That was my job. And I used to love protecting the children at that
Yeah.
job. So I'm sure that's some of the things you're doing now on a
Yeah,
much
yeah,
bigger
yeah.
level, though, of course.
Yeah. We so right now we have one of our campaigns. It's 150 years is enough. So because the oldest youth prison in New Jersey is, I think it was 1866. It was like right after the Civil War. So it's over 150 years. And these facilities are old, they're antiquated, they don't work to rehabilitate youth. And so part of our the work that we do is to try to close these youth prisons and to provide alternatives to incarceration, because New Jersey has the worst racial disparities in youth incarceration in the whole country. We incarcerate a Black youth. The incarceration rate is 18 times that of a white youth. So the 18-to-1 incarceration ratio, which is the worst in the country. And that is notwithstanding the fact that both Black and youth commit most offenses at similar rates. So that disparity is systemic racism. That's just what it is. I mean, and we're also really bad on adult incarceration. We also are the worst in the country with that too, where the incarceration ratio is 12-to-1. For the rate at which we incarcerate Black people is 12 times that as white as a white individual.
Now, is that a political statement? Is that seeing that New Jersey has always been mostly been a Democratic controlled state? Is that a political statement of the Democrats saying this is the way we want it? Or don't you deal with politics? I don't want to step on your toes here.
Yeah. Is it a political? Well, I think it's true, noting that that most of these legislators are Democratic. You know what I think it is? There is a certain level of it being political, because it's easy to say, I'm going to be tough on crime. I'm going to lock these people up. I'm going to make sure everyone is safe. That's easy for certain politicians to say. What's more challenging for them is to say, let's look at the root causes for why we have crime. Let's look at the lack of opportunities in certain communities. Let's see how we can build up these communities, what type of programs we can have. No youth decides, hey, I'm going to steal a car for unless they don't have any other alternative, which is better than stealing the car in that moment. Or same thing with any other crime right there. And that requires harder work. And I think in the name of perhaps a political expedience, I think that some legislators don't want to do that work, and they just want to resort to what they think will end up getting them votes and unfortunately getting them donations from the police unions.
Okay. Now on the website, you said that there are like 3 pillars of social justice.
Yeah.
Economic justice, criminal justice reform, and democracy and justice.
Yeah.
What do they mean?
What do we mean by those the other areas?
Yeah, by those 3 pillars.
Well, the thing about it is, and I like that we call them pillars, because pillars support a roof, and when we think about a roof of justice, and when we think about justice in New Jersey, justice requires there to be an access to wealth for communities of color. Justice requires that Black and brown communities are not targeted by police and disproportionately having force used against them, disproportionately being incarcerated. And it also includes the power to vote. One of our successes was at the Institute was providing the ability to vote for people who had indictable offense convictions, who were formerly incarcerated. There was a time where they couldn't vote. And because of legislation that we championed along with other partners and with legislators, we were able to get the vote. So that's another example of the work that we do, and it's all to support the roof of justice. We have, on the economic sphere, we have some of the worst racial disparities, racial wealth disparities in the country. And as you know, New Jersey is a very incredibly wealthy state. It's either number one or number two. It kind of goes between us and Maryland, wealthiest state in the country. However, there's a $300,000 racial wealth gap between the median net wealth of a white family as opposed to a black family.
A 300,000?
$300,000 racial wealth gap. And the reason for that is because of home ownership. For white people own a home. That's, the American dream, to own a home. But for black people, there's so many barriers. There's been historical barriers for black home ownership, such that so black people in New Jersey are, concentrated in the urban areas of Newark, Camden, Patterson, Trenton. In those areas, home ownership is lower. It's more rental, people who rent, and that's as a result of generations of policies. For example, the biggest boon to people joining the middle class was the GI Bill. A lot of white people were not in that middle class before the GI Bill. The GI Bill comes out and it supports low interest loans and down payments for white families, white families that had people who served in World War II. Now, black people served in World War II, but very few, if any of them in this area, got access to that money. So they did not get that home ownership when white families did. And now you know how homes appreciated in price right now. So that's just wealth. That's just wealth that these communities.
I know that the homes appreciated outside of black areas.
Outside of black area, well, because of redlining,
right?
Disinvestment in the black areas,
right?
Too. Yeah,
right. And,
yeah.
So I mean that's the problem right now. Is that I live in Trenton, and when home values dropped back in the middle 2000s, I mean everybody dropped. But when they started going back up again, they went up much faster in the white communities and than they have in black communities. So that's another punch in the face.
They did, and the worst thing, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know you get this, right?
No, tell
I know
our
you
people.
Get this.
Talk to our people.
But the thing is, it's all by design.
Yeah,
this is all public policy. This is all it's disinvestment through redlining into communities of color. I've seen these maps, like where literally the red neighborhoods. They took a map and they had like it colored in red, and this was the federal government that co-signed on this, and because of that, there was disinvestment inside those areas. Banks were just basically being penalized for trying to give loans to anybody, and they're so like, hey, let's just not even give money to any of these people in these in these neighborhoods, and have all that money go into white neighborhoods. So that's how we could ask for reparations. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, how are we going to find like which family owned what family and that? And it's like, no, our United States government was behind this. They got tax revenue from this. They had public policy and laws to perpetuate slavery, perpetuate this discrimination. So that's the reason why we need to have reparations. I know you know this, but it's like the government did all this, and we're asking for New Jersey to reckon with its own legacies of government policy, going all the way back to its founding to now.
So this is by design, something that is supposed to be happening.
Yeah,
that's an uphill fight.
We are a very segregated state. We have so many municipalities in New Jersey, but there's so much segregation, and I grew up in New Jersey. I didn't recognize this growing up. I didn't know that this is like how it was, But why do we have so many school districts, right? And white school districts, there's an argument that that some people have that they don't want their tax revenue to go support kids in other school districts and in what they consider to be failing districts, but are really the districts in our urban areas. There really is a us versus them mentality when it comes to how our municipalities are designed, what communities are in which municipalities, and how funding goes for public schools or doesn't go for public schools. And it's very unfortunate, but this is the work. This is the work. This is the hand that we're dealt. We kind of have to go and work through this to try to make it better.
System where money talk, nobody walk. When there's a $300,000 divide between medium income between blacks and whites, money talk. So they continually make advantages for white people as opposed to black people. Now, when you're all right, now you hit on two things. You got bail knocked out of New Jersey. You got ex-incarcerated people able to vote. What's the third thing that you've done, or that you're fighting to get done right now?
So for me particularly, or just the Institute in general?
The Institute in general.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, there's actually a lot of priorities. It's not just three. There's a lot of priorities. Having a Voting Rights Act in New Jersey is a priority of ours. We see right now the federal government where we don't have the House right now. I know I can't speak so politically, but like Democrats are not in the House right now. The majority in the House. There's a Senate.
Well, when we had it, did they do anything?
Yeah, well, that's another story. Right? But but then we also have a very conservative Supreme Court, and we've seen a lot of challenges to rights to voter protections on the national level. So we want there to be voter protections in New Jersey. Another priority of ours is same-day voter registration, where we have these arbitrary registration deadlines of 15 days. It doesn't have to be 15 days. It could actually be the same day that people can come in, and then they could vote. They could register to vote and vote in the same time. And that's something that, what do you say?
I'm sorry, we have the technology to make that happen.
Yeah. Even it's, and this is actually not the body of work that I work on, but I've been talking to my colleague about this, but right now, say you go to your polling site and you believe you're registered there, but they can't find you on the voting poll, the register, the roll. You could do a provisional ballot, right? And when you do a provisional ballot, if they eventually find out that you are registered to vote there, then they count it. But right now, if they go through all the work to identifying who you are, and they find out that you're not registered for you to vote, then they will register you through that provisional ballot, but then they will throw out your ballot.
No stuff.
They'll throw out your ballot. So what this law is going to make it is, so if they do all that work, which you're already doing, we'll have them have that count, have your ballot now count. And the reason why this is important, specifically for communities of color, is because those are the communities where, due to all the systemic issues I mentioned about being renters, maybe not having housing security, moving from one location to the next location, they're not necessarily being registered to vote. It's also young people who they also move around, or people who might be in college, coming back from college, who are not registered to vote. New Americans, people who just became American citizens, might not be registered to vote. And also, this is another situation which it's a little interesting, but just hear me out on this, is people who were formerly incarcerated. So they were incarcerated, so you can't vote when you're in prison, which is another issue. We want to fix that. But when they get released after the registration deadline, and they can't vote. There's nothing that they can do to vote. And that actually affected hundreds of people in the 2020 elections. So those are the groups of people who are negative, people of color, also negatively impacted by these voter registration laws. So that's another thing that we want to change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you work in the field of education at all?
I, not education law, but there is a nexus between you've heard of the school to prison pipeline,
Right.
how
Right.
they excessively discipline Black and brown youth in school, which leads them down a road where they can be formally incarcerated later on. So we work with researching that and trying to come up with recommendations for how we can disrupt that. But we don't work necessarily in the field of education, but maybe trying to disrupt that school to prison pipeline. That's some of the work that we do.
Okay. Now, having been a prosecutor and now working with the Institute, policing, is there some way to stop the horrible, decreasing some of the police murders and atrocities that go on between Black people, brown people, and the police?
Yes, yes, there is a way. Yes, we have to believe that there is a way to do that. It's so easy to feel constantly disappointed all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we have to constantly work to find a way of preventing police violence particularly against communities of color. Earlier today, I was just at a press conference about the Najee Seabrooks killing at the hands of Patterson Police Department. The body camera footage of that horrendous incident was just released today. I have not had a chance to look at it. However, just a little background about what happened was Najee Seabrooks was he worked for Patterson Healing Collective, which is a mental health specialized in mental health and violence intervention. They will show up on the scene and try to prevent violence from happening, even without police being there. So he was trained in that way, and he himself was having a mental health crisis. And he was in his own apartment, and unfortunately the police were there. They were called to the scene. Patterson Healing Collective, their specialists were also on the scene, and unfortunately they were prevented from entering and interacting with Najee. The police went in, and due to police action, they ended up shooting him multiple times and killing him. There's going to be a lot of news that follows the body camera footage, but I think the most important thing for us to look at is the system that we currently have, where police are the response to mental health. What we need to do is we need to recognize that mental health crises is something that needs to be responded to with medicine, with people with training in mental health. People who can intervene, people who can intercede, people who are focused on healing and not a militarized police response. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But that's what we do. We send police into these impossible situations because they can't possibly have the solutions. They cannot, because a gun is not the solution to mental health crises. But they go in. So how can we fix this situation is recognizing what police are equipped to do and what police are not equipped to do. And they are not equipped to handle people in mental health crises. Also, we need to have community-based violence intervention across the board. So that way, people who are credible messengers, people who know the community can go into situations, and if there's people who are having disagreements, they can interact with them preemptively, and not just rely on a police response later on, because at that point it's too late. Having the police there, it's after something's already happened, and it will result in detention, will result in incarceration, and will end up resulting in what it is right now, our prisons being filled with 62% Black people in the state, which only has 15% Black people. So we need to recognize that public safety is not policing. For too long, people have said public safety is policing. There's a Department of Public Safety has police in it and all that. No, public safety is something that's broader than police. Police could be one component of it. I'm not I'm not against, the Institute's position is not against the institution of policing, although we know some organizations are against that institution and we respect them. But we think that there may be a role for police, but also communities should be empowered to keep themselves safe. And we need a community response, and that's what's necessary.
Where is the institute?
Institute's in Newark.
Okay.
It's at Military Park area.
Okay. And how long has it been around?
Oh, I should be prepared for this. I believe 20 years.
Okay.
Oh, gosh, it's something around there, around 20 years.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
well,
But before I was here, I've been at the Institute for 2 years. My anniversary was March 8th.
okay.
I remember that vividly. My last day in the DA's office, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. So I know I've been here for 2 years, but the Institute has been here many years before I was here. It'll be here many years after I'm done.
Okay. You've worked on both sides of the road, so to speak. What are your thoughts about combating the system of white supremacy?
You see, it's challenging because you have to do the work. We do the work. We know this, right? But it has to be, what are white people doing to combat the system of white supremacy? And that's challenging to get individuals who have been privileged, who don't necessarily even know that they've been privileged, to understand these things. We try to do it through data. Sometimes we're successful. Sometimes, when we talk about the racial wealth gap, we have another campaign that we're working on. There is housing appraisal discrimination right now, where if a Black person tries to get an appraisal for their house, an appraiser will go in and will possibly know that there's a Black family there. We'll see Black art. We'll see the Black family's pictures there. And then they'll appraise that house lower than a white family who's trying to sell the house. Now, sometimes Black people get around this by having a neighbor pretend to be them and get the housing appraisal. And we've seen in certain situations where the appraisal will go up higher. We talk about these types of issues. We talk about the disparities in incarceration. And sometimes those numbers are able to cut through the fog of racism, systemic racism, just sometimes even internal racism. I have to go here that it's something that's deep. It's deeply seated inside many people. And these people are in the systems of government, different levels of government, and getting them to have empathy, getting them to try to understand what other communities are going through is sometimes a challenge. Empathy is not something that's inherited. It's something that's taught. It's something that you have to practice, and that's our challenge. So we at the Institute we do the research, we do the advocacy to try to create that the atmosphere where there could be empathy and for the people in power who sometimes they're not, a lot of times they're not people of color, to get them to get on our side on these issues.
Okay.
Yeah, white supremacy is not a Black problem. It's a white people problem.
And it hurts them. That's the thing about it. Like, I might have to take my Institute hat off, right, for a moment. But it's like there's a lot of, that's the biggest lie that they'll tell poor white people. It's like, at least you're better off than Black people. That's something historically that they've done, and I think that there's this. If this policy, if public policy was focused on alleviating some of the issues that communities of colors have, it's going to help white people. It's going to help white people. It's going to help lower income white people. It's going to help middle class white people. It's going to help with maternal health care. It's going to help with education. It's going to help. Hey, here's another thing too. If we work towards addressing the root causes of crime, then that's going to be lower crime, which is also going to help all communities. It's going to help white communities. It's going to help Black communities. It's going to help diverse communities. But we get divided into different communities, different camps, different races, and we get pit against each other so much that that sometimes we can't see that, we should all be on the same side. It's really just a matter of justice and equity and doing that, achieving that, and that'll help everybody.
Okay, well, I see you and the Institute are you're still up, you still have hope and belief in system will change. I don't know, I think I've seen too much to have that, but y'all keep doing it. Maybe you know something that I don't know, which I would be the happiest person in the world. Brother man, I appreciate you being with us this week. You've been very enlightening to us and to the people who will see this. So we have to keep fighting regardless,
and keep having your successes. Keep working, keep striving, and we're glad to have you tonight, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. Okay, take care of yourself. Thank you,
Mr. Yannick Wood. Oh.
Boy, I love conversations like that. I just love conversations like that. I love hearing people. Because he's coming from a totally different perspective than I've never even thought about being a prosecutor or even talking to prosecutors as far as that goes, But he's been there. He's seen it. He's done it, and he just has a way of continuing to fight for justice.
It seems like a very good brother to do it also.
Yeah, that's great. So this has been another great week here for On the Case. Next week though, we have
Antonio Tony Bellamy, Pastor Antonio
Senior
Tony Bellamy,
Pastor,
Senior Pastor of Transformation Church. Tony Bellamy.
Do you know him?
I met with him a couple weeks ago at the call for 100 men at the Trenton High basketball game. After that, the murder at the Cure Arena, they called 100 men together, and he was actually my contact person. And we met up at Trenton High, and very good brother. We went and had a meal together, sat down and talked. Very good brother.
Okay, very good. Now, Transformation Church here in Trenton?
I believe it is. Yes. Okay.
Well, I don't think we've had a religious leader on yet, have we?
Not that I know of.
No. Man, how we do that? I don't know. But anyway, we got our first one, and that's good. That's a good thing. So next week, next Thursday, 8:00, we're going to be right here. And we're going to be with Senior Pastor of Transformation Church, Antonio Tony Bellamy. He'll be here to give us his strong words, and we'll see what happens then. Okay?
All right.
Son, it's been good.
Wow.
Appreciate being with you. I love that young man. Love you. Love our guests.
Love you too.
Love our audience. And we'll see all that. We want to thank Al Alatundi, and we want to thank Sean, for her help. She's away this week, but
yes, she is.
Get her back, but she works too hard anyway, so it's all right.
Any production problems we may have had is because our Sean was not with us tonight.
That's right. All right, son, you take care. See you next week at 8:00 right here on The Case with Kamau Kujichagulia. Good night.
Co-host.
Are you searching for where you can find the latest news and breaking news today for U.S., world, weather, entertainment, politics, and health? Visit us at www.thenubiannews.com. The Nubian News, loving the